And we are recording.
Good to go. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. For those of you online, please use the raise hand function or type your name in the chat if you'd like to make a public comment during our public comments section. We're going to open the board meeting and Alexis will do roll call.
Okay, Bill Gropp.
Here.
Jim Knight. Did you? Yeah. Okay. Gotcha, Jim. Sarah Lucas. Present. Steve Nagy.
Present.
Brian Prang. Brian Prang let us know, and I don't think I see him in the chat or in here, that he was not going to be able to join today. Would that absence be excused?
Yes.
Thank you. Jeff Pritchard.
Present.
Thank you. And Catherine Stevens.
Present.
Okay, and that would conclude our roll call.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to public comment, limited to 2 minutes per speaker. And do we have anybody set for public comment today?
I think we do, but I have an acknowledgement I'd like to make. Okay, so I would like to acknowledge that we have received written public comment from Jared Hillock and Wendy Kellington submitted by Tony Helbling. These comments were forwarded to the State Aviation Board and are available on our website. So now we'll open up to everybody online. So each speaker, please state your name, city of residence, or affiliation for the record. So we'll go ahead and see. I know I saw a couple in the chat. And it looks like Tony Helbling is in here. So let me go ahead and see if I can give access to the mic. Okay. Tony, you should have access to your mic now.
Good morning. I'm Tony Helbling. I'm president of Aurora Airport Improvement Association. I found out yesterday that Wendy Kellington's submittal that we sent in on September 22nd that dramatically affects the decision that you're looking to make a decision upon today about the ARC with the funding issues. It had never been sent to the board members. We're disappointed, really disappointed, and kind of feel like the board was being insulated from this document. It stuns us that it wasn't sent until yesterday afternoon when I asked for it to be sent. AAIA objects to the amendments unlawfully undermining the legislature's required advisory committee check on grant making established by ORS 319-023, and separately unlawfully introduces unconstrained, wholly discretionary decision making divorced from any standards, undermining transparency and predictability in funding. The proposal unlawfully proposes to remove the meaningful role of the ARC that established in and required by state law. The role of the ARC in state law is not perfunctory as the proposed amendments reflect in ODAV's review. Rather, the legislature expressly assigned the ARC a specific role in aviation funding and demands fairness in funding by ensuring the composition of the ARC is diverse members from each of the area commissions on transportation chartered by the Oregon Transportation Commission. Legislature expressly requires the diverse ARC it created to review and make grant funding recommendations to OAB, and OAB is required to pay attention to those recommendations. But here instead, ODAV and OAB proposes to replace the legislative mandated role for the ARC review and recommendations for SOAR funding, with ODAV creating an alarming and unlawfully policy echo chamber to hear only that which ODAV wants to hear. The proposal is unlawful and is contrary to ODAV and Oregon Aviation Board's legislative mandates, and OAB should reject the proposal as it sits. Under the statute 18.3 400, the Court of Appeals evaluates a rule's validity on its face, examining the rule enabling statutes and procedural compliance. A rule is invalid if it exceeds statutory authority or violates constitutional provisions. The provisions removing the ARC's role in making recommendation to the OABs concerning SOAR funding, reprioritization, and boundless maximum clauses fail on the face of the rule. AIA supports transparent, criteria-driven allocation of funding. The core changes should be revised to replace boundless discretion with rule-level standards and findings. The SOAR changes should be revised to preserve ARC's statutory recommendation role and to clarify that 25% of SOAR allocation remains inviolate and shall be allocated for SOAR-only purposes. We've forwarded those recommendations in our submittal that you can read. AAIA strongly suggests that the OAB tables this action to consider our recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have Becky, Wendy, so three more so far. So we'll go next with Becky. I'll go ahead and give. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, Becky, you should have access to your mic now.
Thank you. I'm Becky Breckenridge with Oregon Pilots Association, and I appreciate this opportunity to comment. I have become aware that Milano Airport's fuel tank receipt printer has been non-operational for at least a year. It's an inconvenience to the local flight club who have multiple aircrafts and users. Record keeping has become more complicated, not only by the club, but to those that fly in from other airports. I request that it be fixed for smoother airport operations. Thank you.
Okay, and then it looks like Bruce Bennett would be next. I'm going to go ahead and give you access to your mic. Bruce, you should have access to your mic now.
Good morning. I wanted to say I agree with Tony's statement and the letter that Wendy wrote for us, but I think it's important to know that I certainly are not trying to be negative or controversial. We strongly support the airport. My family's at property there for almost 60 years. I was a leasee 60 years as a through the fence. I was a leasee for 30 years. Met my wife there. My mother worked at the front desk. All my kids have worked there. So we are very passionate and strongly supporting the Aurora Airport, and just want to help when we see problems. I think we're not trying to be problematic or troublemakers or not get along with ODAV. I've personally worked with ODAV for longer than anyone there has been there, and it's been a very long-term beneficial and positive relationship. And so that's my only point, is that that there are some things that need to be worked out, but we have to work together to do that. And please open your minds to working together with the users and businesses, property owners on the Aurora Airport. Thank you.
Okay, and then it looks like our last public comment is Wendy Kellington. Oh, and then probably actually another one. There we go. So Wendy, you should have access to your mic now.
All right. Thank you, Wendy Kellington. And I think, as you know, I represent AAIA, and I agree with the previous two speakers concerning the Aurora Airport. But my concern is that, I wrote a letter to ODAV and this board on September the 22nd concerning this rulemaking that you're being asked to decide today. And it was apparently viewed as so unimportant that it wasn't even forwarded to the members of the board. It wasn't even mentioned in the PowerPoint. And on the public comments part of the website for this meeting, those comments aren't even there. And there's a whole bunch legally wrong with that, as Stacy will tell you. I think I saw her on here, that when a state agency is engaged in a rulemaking activity, the state is required to provide that information to the decision maker, number one, in time for you to digest it. And if you got it just yesterday, you have not had time to digest it. And to thoughtfully consider that public comment. Public comment is not just this pro forma thing that happens that we ignore. It exists for a reason, and it's important. So the first thing that should happen is that you as the board should let your staff know that because they didn't provide you this information, you're not prepared to make a decision today, and review that information and then make a decision. The second thing is that this proposal has some serious legal problems, the rulemaking proposal, and I've outlined them in a 6-page letter, and I don't have time in a 2-minute public comment period to tell you what they all are. Tony outlined some of them, but one of the main ones is that ODAV took a run at this proposal to specifically remove the ARC from the from rulemaking, or from being considered, their advice being considered in terms of SOAR grants. And the legislature rejected that. And yet this proposal comes in the back end to do what the legislature rejected. I think that's really dangerous. The ARC exists for a reason. If it hasn't functioned appropriately, let's fix that. But I think it's a bad thing for this board to remove advice from its expert ARC. And I think this rulemaking proposal just has an awful lot of problems that you ought to look at, and at the minimum, review our letter, and at a maximum, reject it. Thank you.
Okay, and then it looks like we have another public comment from Robin Holdman. I'm going to go ahead and give them access to their mic. Robin, you should have access to your mic now. Robin, are you there? You should have access to your mic now. Are you able to unmute? Okay. It does not look like Robin is able to unmute themselves, or may not be available. Shall I move on? Proceeding.
If Robin's listening, if you can put it in the chat, if you're able to unmute. All right, doesn't look like it. Oh, wait, here we go. Unable to unmute.
It does say that you do have access to your mic, Robin. Is the button not available to you? At least on my end, you do have access to your mic, and should be able to unmute now. says that it won't let her speak. However, on our side of the teams, it does state that Robin should have access to the mic.
Okay. Yeah, Robin, sorry for the technical difficulty. If you can submit comment in written form, we will certainly look at that.
Okay. So I will go ahead and lower Robin's hand. So it does not look like, I'm going to check the chat really quickly. It does not look like we have anybody else signed up for public comment. And I don't see any other raised hands. So I think that would conclude our public comment section.
Okay, thank you, Alexis. Okay, we will move on to an update on the Aurora State Airport Master Plan with Tony Beach.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And if we get that comment in the chat from Robin, just feel free to stop me if we want to address that. Robin, if you're not able to comment here, I'm happy to, any questions you have, if it's specific to a state airport, happy to follow up with you as well.
Yeah, sorry,
going
Tony,
into
the chat is disabled. So if
oh,
Robin could send that public comment to mail.aviation at odab.oregon.gov.
okay. All right. Sorry for the confusion. Okay, jumping into the Aurora Airport Master Plan update. It's a very brief update. I just wanted to explain that we are not going to be bringing the Aurora Airport Master Plan to the board for adoption in this coming December board meeting as we had originally planned. We want to ensure ample coordination with Marion and Clackamas counties and other jurisdictions on comp plan compatibility and working through our state agency coordination program. So we don't currently have a date or location set for when we're going to be bringing the master plan to the board for adoption, but we will share that meeting date and location as soon as we have that available. And the meeting, the hearing will be located in Marion County. So just wanted to state that for everyone because we had been planning on December, and that's the latest.
Okay, Tony, thank you for that explanation. Appreciate that. Okay, and then that brings us to, and Alexis, give me a time check. We're supposed to hit the executive session at 10:45. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
I
great.
did public notice it that it was at the end of the 6th agenda item as well. So
okay, perfect. Okay, very good. All right, well, we will move on to Andrea providing us an update on the OAR 738124 changes that are proposed.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Stevens and State Aviation Board. I'll just share my presentation here real quickly. All right, can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. So this is our adoption of the ASAP administrative rule updates. And we began working on these updates at the beginning of this year, so it has been quite a few months process. We worked very closely with DOJ to complete the draft rule updates in February and March. We held 2 rulemaking advisory committee meetings in April. We did our draft review and presentations to the Aviation Board in May and July, and then submitted our final draft and notice of proposed rulemaking to the Secretary of State in August. We held our required public comment period and public hearings in September. And then that brings us to today, where we are requesting the State Aviation Board to jointly adopt the rule updates with ODAV, and then we will publish those permanent rules with the Secretary of State. And then just for a quick summary, again, the updates were made to the sections listed up there. And then our reasons for the updates were to update terms and grant and project administration processes. And then again, to clarify the State Aviation Board's ability to redistribute the grant funding or reprioritize the grant applications. And then again, just to reiterate that we created a new process for the State Aviation Board that will help provide some transparency in that approval process. Our updates to the rules did not change any of the Aviation Board's abilities to reprioritize or approve different grant amounts, but instead, again, it just provides more clarity, transparency, and then we'll have a written document that will go with the core grant cycle information so that we can have that for a historical record. And of course, one of the biggest changes is that we removed the provision in the rules that allowed grantees to apply for more than the 150,000 minimum grant amount. And just due to issues with not all airports always being aware of that option. And then, of course, the amount of applications that we're receiving and wanting to be able to fund as many as possible, we are just limiting at the $150,000. So those were those major updates for the core program. And then I do have here language for adoption that was provided by DOJ. And so at this time, I would just like to ask the board if there are any questions about the rulemaking and then move forward with the adoption.
Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, I'm in a different location. I'm trying to find my unmute button. Question, Andrea, given the testimony today and some of the other things that we have seen and just like I said, the testimony from earlier, the public comment, if we were to take some time as opposed to going forward with the amendment of the rules today, would that affect what effect might that have on the next cycle, or would that have any effect on the next cycle and the timelines for reviews by each step in the process?
Really quickly, Alex, did you want me to go ahead and address that, or is that something you wanted to?
Go ahead, and then if you need me to clarify anything, happy to do so.
Okay, perfect. So there are a few of the updates in there, including ones that are updates to our grant agreement document that if the rules aren't adopted now, that will postpone basically getting the grant agreement document updated. And then as well as, just some of those processes, we want to make sure that we have that updated board process secured in there before we get to the approvals in February. So, it is, there definitely could be some effects in the review process if we don't have them adopted.
Okay. And then, yeah, that would be that's my question for now. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, so I took part in the public review meeting that we had for these rules, and the chair of the ARC committee was there and gave her feedback. And we had some good discussion around the whole thing with the chair of the ARC committee and the people who joined us from the public. My question is, the letter that is questioning the legislation, was that part of the DOJ's review? Did the DOJ see that letter before they reviewed this and gave us this recommendation?
And Bill,
Yes.
I think I'm going to jump in here and say, I think we actually will need to, if we can't remove it to this executive session, we will need to move it to a different executive session to hear from council on that.
Okay. I just wondered if they saw it and it was positioned with this update.
Totally valid question, but I think we
Yeah.
have to take that offline.
Okay, thanks.
How about Jim?
Please tell us why the information that was sent to us late yesterday and spoken, today by public testimony. Why did we not see this before yesterday?
I suppose I can answer that question. I received.
Alexis, we're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I received that email from Tony Helbling that contained the public comments from Wendy at, I believe it was 1:40 or 1:20, and then or 1 o'clock, sometime around 1 o'clock, and then I sent it around 1:27 p.m. So I received it, and then I pretty much immediately sent it on from there. So that's I did send it out once I received it. It looks like Stacy has her hand raised.
Yeah, Stacy, I'm going to skip over Sarah just for a minute to go to Stacy.
Thank you, Chair Stevens. I'm actually going to go ahead and make a recommendation and agree with Ms. Kellington that this actually get pushed off till December. I don't know that you'll necessarily need an executive session, but I agree that the board should consider the comments. And if the comments were left out of the packet, that's something that the board will at least have an opportunity to consider in December. And that should correct anything that any irregularities or discrepancies that may have happened in this hearing.
Okay, thank you for that recommendation, Stacey. I'll go to Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Stevens. So Stacey just hit on my first point, which was to ask for a December so that we can consider this information. But I would like to give the department an opportunity to explain the rationale behind removing the ARC from the SOAR at this meeting so that we have that understanding when we review this material.
Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable ask. Just a little more detail of why we're taking this action. Andrea, do you have input on that or other staff?
Do you want the information now? I mean, it sounds like we're being asked by Stacy to postpone this to another session. So I don't know if it necessarily is going to make a difference if we provide the
Well, I think
information
mainly
now.
it's for process for it to postpone to any decision making until December. But I know that there's just some procedural reasons why this was being looked at in the first place, right?
Sure. Okay, yeah. So specifically to the SOAR section of the administrative rules, and Stacy may need to help me with some of the kind of the legal sides of this, but basically the way that the ARC has reviewed our ASAP grants since the inception of the program back in 2017. Every time that these projects specifically for SOAR have been brought to the ARC, there was always a lot of questions and of why the SOAR projects were even being reviewed by the ARC committee. It's from a separate, pool of funds specific to ODAV owned airports. It comes from a very specific budget. There's no ranking of the SOAR project, so one doesn't take priority over the other. And so every time this was brought to the ARC, it was always questioned on why they were even being reviewed. It goes to, after the internal review of those SOAR projects, it goes to the board here after the cycle has completed, and everybody is allowed the exact same public comment period to the board that they would be, otherwise. And then the board reviews and either approves or not those SOAR projects. Again, they are specific to the state-owned airports. And while there is some specific cases in the past where SOAR had been used towards NIPIAS airports, the general, preference of the agency is to use those very, very limited SOAR funds towards non-NIPIAS airports because those NIPIAS airports already have a funding source via their, FAA eligibility. So that's a very brief summary of how we came to this conclusion. It was really to help speed along the process and really save a lot of time of all of our ARC members, all of our ACT members, and of course our board members and our ODAV staff as well. So this would save a lot of time. And again, it would still have the board review, and an opportunity for the public to provide their comment at that point.
Okay, thanks for that additional information. And Jim, did you have another question?
It's a request is that as we have an opportunity, which I'm hoping for, that have further discussion on these topics, it would be really helpful for me as a board member to have a written response to these letters that we've just received yesterday. It refuting what the claims are or helping us to understand better why those claims are misinterpreted or if they're correct. But honestly, I think the point's been well raised is that we have not had enough time to review this. And that we do need more information. So that was all I had to say.
All right, thanks, Jim. Kenji?
So quick couple things. The point is very well taken in terms of making sure that you have time to deliberate with all the information that is available. But I also want to make a comment that I want you to take a look at where the comments are coming from, or whether they're focused on one particular airport, and just take that into context as well. The other thing is, I think after this deliberative process, my hope is, as Alex said, that we ensure that the process is as efficient as possible, because time is very valuable for a lot of these folks that are involved. Excuse me. And I just want to make sure that everybody is respectful of that. At the same time, taking into account what we are required to by statute and what the legal interpretation is from our legal counsel. So I think that'll come out, especially during the executive session. We have time to take an analysis. So I just want to put that out there. So thanks so much.
Okay, thanks for that, Kenji. I am looking at, I'm having trouble seeing on my screen who this is. Oh. Okay. I don't see any other comments or questions, hands raised. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm looking for board member comments at this point. Board member questions. Okay, I don't see any additional scrolling through here. Okay. Any board member have a thought on what we have as an action item on our agenda right now? Any board members have a thought on that?
Do we need a motion to delay it, or can we just delay it?
I believe that was going to be my question.
Yeah, I believe we can just delay it and just not take action. Is that right? Correct, Alexis? Yes.
Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the appropriate action would be to move it to continue this hearing to December or as soon thereafter. This part of the hearing, excuse me, this question.
And do we need an official motion to do that?
Yeah, any decision you make as a group, you need to have an official action.
Okay.
This is Bill. I'll move that we keep this hearing open and continue it in the December board meeting.
I'll second that.
And just to clarify, this is not a hearing, it is a board action. So we will be continuing this discussion, the board discussion until the December meeting, correct?
So modified.
All right.
I'll second that.
I have a motion to continue this board discussion until the December meeting and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Oh, and I caught myself, Alexis. Alexis would like to do the roll call vote now.
Okay.
Okay. So Bill Graff.
Aye.
Jim Knight,
Aye.
Sarah Lucas,
Aye.
Steve Nagy,
Aye.
Brian Pang is absent. Or excuse, I'm sorry. Jeff Pritchard
Aye.
and Catherine Stevens.
Aye. Okay, that
And-
motion carries. Thank you for that. Staff, I know you want to try to move things along, but I think we just do need a little more consideration on this and just make sure that we have followed all process so we don't run into issues at a later date. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay, so then that brings us up to the state airport obstruction removal update with Tony and Century West. And this will be, oh, I'm sorry, this is the executive session. And so what we will be doing then
Not
is
quite
we
yet.
will, oh, not quite yet. Okay.
Yep. Sorry, I'm sorry to interject. We do have a couple presentations for this meeting and before we go into executive session.
Oh, okay, great.
All right, I am going to share my screen. Okay, can you see the presentation? Great,
Yes,
okay.
we can.
All right, well, good morning again. And Tony Beach, State Airports Manager, Oregon Department of Aviation. I'm going to just give a little overview on the obstruction removal projects that we're working on and our request for board action that will authorize the department to proceed with easement acquisition. And let's see if I have the right thing here. Okay, I'm just going to briefly cover our key performance measures and or at least the one relative to airspace and obstructions. And then I'm going to go over just some general airport needs and what ODAV is doing for obstruction removal. And I'm going to talk about the impacts those obstructions are having on our airports. And before I kick it over to Century West, who's going to go into a little more detail about the projects themselves and come back to me on the current status of these projects and our request. And then again, we are going to have an executive session as well before we get to the actual board vote. So our key performance measures, these are specific goals set by the legislature for state agencies that track their performance, and we have 7 of them. Our key performance measure number 2 measures state-owned airport approaches meeting or in the process of meeting visual approach standards. And we are going to have more detail on the actual KPMs from Kristen in a future meeting. So more information will be coming on that, but this is just an overview of that specific goal. And the approaches that are currently not meeting standard are due to primarily obstructions that are off airport property that we don't have control over. I want to clarify, we've talked a lot about obstruction removals in prior meetings, and we just acquired this piece of equipment in this picture back in March this year. And this is the forestry equipment that we use SOAR funds to acquire. And we put it to great use already this year, and it still has a lot of work ahead of it. But this is a new capability that we're mostly utilizing on state property or areas where we can enter into agreements or already have easements for the removal of obstructions. And again, this is primarily being utilized at rural and non-federally funded airports where we don't have other resources to remove or control those obstructions. Just a couple quick examples. The picture on the left, this was last week out at Malino, where a tree fell over the fence and during a windstorm. And then the middle picture is out of the Prospect State Airport earlier this year in anticipation of the runway project that was recently completed. And then kind of coming back to Malino, that was just 2 days ago, the picture on the right, where we were removing that large tree that fell over the fence. So just a quick highlight of how much utilization that piece of equipment's getting, and there's still a lot of work ahead of us. Where we don't have any property interest or the ability to go and remove obstructions, this is where we have projects. So we are utilizing federal funding to remove existing obstructions in navigable use airspace. So there are already obstructions. And again, for obstructions that are not on state property and we do not have existing easements, and they're only we only can do that at federally funded airports because we're utilizing FAA funds for these projects. Without that federal funding, ODAV does not have the funding to be able to accomplish this work. We would not be able to remove those existing obstructions, and new obstructions will become hazards, as well as the existing obstructions will become more hazardous. So we have 4 airports where we have ongoing obstruction removal projects. That's the Aurora, Chiloquin, Joseph, and Milano state airports, as shown on this map. Kind of hard to tell. Well, they're highlighted yellow. And then just a quick overview of the impacts for these 4 airports. At Aurora, we have obstructions in the approach surface on both ends, as well as in the VASI obstacle clearance surface and the TERPS departure surface. And there's a lot of concern, especially from the users of the Aurora State Airport, that these obstructions are potentially impacting takeoff and instrument approach procedure minimums at Aurora. At Chiloquin, we have approach surface obstructions on both ends, and on the north end, especially significant close-in obstructions, and not just the number of obstructions, but the number of different parcels and properties that those obstructions are on. At the Joseph State Airport, we have approach surface obstructions on the south end, and we are unable to publish night minimums for the circling instrument approach until those obstructions are mitigated, so either removed or, in one case, adding an obstruction light on a power pole. And the instrument approach procedures was one of the primary objectives identified in the very recent master plan. In fact, it's the very first project listed in the CIP for the Joseph State Airport. And the reason is because this very rural community that is very isolated, especially in wintertime, when the only highway in and out is often closed for winter weather, when they can't transport patients or do medevac, they really rely on the airport to be able to transport. So it was a huge topic and need identified in the master plan. So that is what this project is looking to achieve. And then at Milano, again on the south end, approach surface obstructions, and we did last year remove the obstructions on the properties that we had easements for, but there are still a significant number of obstructions on properties that we don't have easements. And going back to 2018, the PAPI on the south end was turned off because it put aircraft directly in the path of obstructions on that approach path. So we've had remarks published and had those PAPIs turned off for well over 7 years now. So that's just a very quick overview of the impacts and kind of our current conditions at the airports. I am going to kick it over to Tom Headley and James Kirby with Century West, who are going to run through their presentation.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chair Stevens and the Aviation Board. Can you hear me okay? All right, excellent. Thank you. I would be on screen. I apologize. I'm off site. Happy to be here, and but I will be shuffling through. And Tony, I appreciate you advancing slides for me today. So otherwise, it's nice to be on screen there with you. So today, I'd like to go through something similar to what you'd seen in the previous board meeting. However, this broadens the scope of the presentation to focus on the 4 projects that Tony has just initially explained here. So the overview, we'll go through the project definition, this higher level look at what the actual project is. And again, sorry, Tom Headley with Century West Engineering. I am working to manage the project for the easement acquisition project, working in hand with James Kirby and others here at Century West to help Tony and his staff through this easement acquisition. And we have as well on our team easement acquisition specialists to help facilitate these projects. So high-level view, project definition, the purpose. I'll spend more time on the timelines of each project, diving into some of the details. Still just giving an overview of what we're looking at here, and then the next steps as well. So next slide, we'll get into project definition. As Tony had alluded to, there are 91 parcels over which ODAV seeks to acquire limited navigation easements. And again, bold emphasis here to improve the airspace safety. This is the theme that you'll hear throughout each one of these, as you know, and your familiarity with the operation of airports. These projects are motivated entirely by the operation of these airports in a safe and efficient manner. Aurora, 21 parcels, Chiloquin State Airport, 43 parcels, Joseph, 2 parcels, Malino is 25 parcels. We'll move to the next slide and know that count is the result, and I'll dive into that a bit more on the timeline slide. That was a considerable amount of effort has gone into these projects just to yield those bullet point numbers that we saw there. The purpose of the project, a master plan for each one of these 4 airports identifies the existing obstructions, these penetrations to the Part 77 surfaces. As we know, the FAA policy that drives the design and operation of these airports from an airspace perspective promotes the safe and efficient use of that airspace. And that basically amounts to obstructions. So how clear is the airspace around each airport? If it's not clear, the actions at hand are removal of those obstructions from those Part 77 surfaces, or as Tony mentioned in the case of Joseph, lighting the obstruction with red lights on poles. Next slide, please. The removal of obstructions requires what we call a limited navigation easement. This allows, as bulleted here, the right of flight at any altitude above the acquired surfaces, the right to prevent erection or growth of all objects above the acquired surface, and the right to enter the property to remove, mark, or light any structures or growth above the acquired surface. Again, this is not property ownership. This is easement to allow for these actions to take place. The purpose of this project is to determine the cost, and this is the current project that we're working with right now, is to determine the cost of easement acquisition for each parcel in question. Very importantly, because that allows for the department to request FAA funding for those easement acquisitions. And so first and foremost, the FAA requires that you proceed through this process of cost formulation and determination, and then propose for a grant ask for the work to be completed. Thank you. Okay, so jumping into the timeline, and I'll go airport by airport here. And this is somewhat broad strokes, the years are the target days. You know, some of these projects start in 1 year and take some time and then conclude with a lot of external stakeholders. But broadly speaking, the big strokes here are that you'll see these projects didn't come out of a vacuum. Early project stages, specifically to this for Aurora, the GIS survey or airport's GIS survey, identifying obstructions to the existing Part 77 surfaces of both runways. That allowed for the FAA to sponsor or partly fund the survey and environmental assessment associated with the obstruction removal. Of note, those are required actions. So the FAA has invested in the required action of that environmental assessment for the tree removal to be completed. And that was finished in 2024 for that environmental assessment. And the survey, so again, the bullet point of the number of parcels here, all that stems from on-the-ground work of a surveyor moving through each one of these properties, obtaining the height of each obstruction and identifying it, and then determining which parcels are affected because they have obstructions within them. Current project stage, determination of cost of easements of all parcels, and that's where we are today on Aurora. Next slide here, we'll just my slides don't have as pretty of pictures as Tony. I apologize, but I do want to throw something up there. There are a lot of exhibits. This particular, each parcel has survey exhibits and obstruction determination exhibits. This is an overview. You'll see something similar to this for each airport here, but just to show the scale of this, this is the and the approach surfaces. We light up in kind of an orange shade the location of these, and then each and every obstruction is identified as to what it is and its height above the obstruction surface, or coming into the obstruction surface, because the FAA, as you may know already, the FAA appreciates that 10 years of growth could be 10 feet of an obstruction. So some of these obstructions may not yet be penetrating, but by the FAA's design guidance, they're surveyed if they are within a certain distance of becoming an obstruction in the future. Okay, moving on to the next slide here. It'll be the Chiloquin Airport. Early identification. I mean, the photo says it all that Tony presented there during construction. You see to the north end of Chiloquin the extent of the trees and the approach surface, but this was identified as early as 1994, formally through 2003 in the master plan. That's the airspace plan and the AMP. Identifying obstructions significantly on the north end and as well on the south end. They're much more limited. The survey and the associated environmental assessment that FAA required was completed in 2019 for this one. So all of these have been on different timelines, you'll see. And that allowed for this current project stage of doing the same, where we are working to determine the cost. And as you saw from the bullet point there, Chiloquin is by far the largest number of trees and properties to be considered. Next slide on this is for Joseph. This one. Oh, sorry about that. A picture. I have to offer a picture. So this does show the area of effect on the right there. That is the approach surface shown, the obstruction survey and removal area, and then on the left, the diligence with which the surveyor recorded each and every tree that was or will imminently become an obstruction to the approach surface. And this is on the 1-7 end. Okay, next slide, please. Joseph, you've got more familiarity on this one based on the previous presentation. Obstructions identified here in the early 90s, again, confirmed through AGIS and FAA flight procedures. This one, as Tony alluded to, has considerable amount of FAA awareness. There had been some big back and forth, constructive back and forth with the FAA, here, the board as well, about these flight procedures aimed especially at the importance of being able to provide live flight services in inclement weather. So being able to remove these obstructions allows for those procedures to be developed and established, implemented, and opens up light flight more year-round. For this, the survey and EA was conducted between 2022 and about just wrapped up in 2024, about this time last year. And again, this was in the same process here right now, with this being by far the most straightforward in terms of number of parcels, and you can count on one hand the number of obstructions that need to be removed. So the next picture will show that. Next slide, please. There we go. This directly from the AGIS survey. What this is basically what the FAA sees when logging into their system. These big red silos represent a light pole and several trees that have been identified. And again, all the work behind these exhibits and these photos is all of the AGIS and the survey and the environmental work and everything leading up to this point to have been able to clearly identify what the obstructions are, where they are, and most specifically on which parcels they exist. Next slide, please, for Malino. Malino project timeline, roughly 2008 for that airspace plan, confirmed in the airport master plan, identified for runway 32. The obstruction survey and EA, again, concluded kind of along the same timeline as another in that 2018-2019 period. The easement acquisition process underway currently. Next slide will show, next slide will show the similar scale of this. So the parcels there lit up with an orange hatch. This on the left coming from the master plan ALP, showing obstructions through the AGIS process. So next slide, please, because I'd like to just bring them all together here. And then soon Tony will pick back up. But the overall project timeline, what Tony and I talked about, what I wanted to show with that is that each one of these airports has been looking at these obstructions for a considerable amount of time. And they've really gotten traction over the last 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, 3, 4 or 5 years, to be having had this investment by the FAA and stakeholders to get to a point where it's recognized these obstructions need to be addressed. Everything has come to this point or converged to this point now where the requirement of being able to begin the negotiation for easement acquisition is where each one of these airports is teed up to right now. And really importantly, the consistency of this, the projects are born of the FAA's requirement to provide airport safety and safe and efficient use of the airports. And then, as Tony had mentioned, to do this work is cost prohibitive if borne entirely by the department. So the FAA funding is required for successful completion of the project, and in such, there has to be the process that the FAA requires, and that's the consistency of each one of these parcels has to be approached in the same manner. The federal easement acquisition policy and guideline rules and regulations related to the acquisition of property interests using federal funds brings with it, as all of us are familiar with, a good deal of check boxes that need to be completed and the order in which these actions can take place. So the future project stage and really this, what we're looking at now is this decision to be explained and expanded on further to provide permission to proceed through the necessity of the project. And that's the big differentiator, especially as we look into ORS requirements here. And that specifically is ORS 35555. The declaration, determination of the necessity of this, the decision that it's necessary is what will keep us moving forward. So that the next steps beyond this would be acquiring those navigation easements and then actually physically removing those obstructions. So that's, oh, yeah, there we go. Right. And very, very importantly, as I spoke with our easement acquisition specialist, it's the language used and the way in which the easement acquisition specialist approaches every single property owner to be consistent, to be courteous of and aware of the significance of the ask of beginning the conversation. And yet the letter, the initial contact, will include the statement that this is needed. This project is needed for the safe and efficient use of the airport. And I think there had been, and I want to make sure I give really briefly before I turn it back over. I don't want to take up too much time here, but the ask about whether or not the county enforcement could be used, if there is overlay zoning or county regulation that would require these actions to be completed. All of the work leading up to this, through the survey, through the environmental assessment, the airport master plan, has identified a general unwillingness of the county enforcement of these overlay zones. If they exist, and in some cases they do, it's not deemed feasible to pursue that route. It's been determined that there's an unwillingness there to pursue that. So this then is becoming the most appropriate path. So, okay, that is it. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to present.
All right, excuse me, bear with me while I get back into my presentation. Okay. Thank you, Tom, for that presentation and overview of all the projects and the work that's been done to date. I do want to underscore a few things that Tom just said, and these 4 projects all kind of originated in different ways, by different means, different times. They've had different milestones completed, whether it's the environmental assessment or survey work that's been done at different stages, but all 4 of these have converged to this point where we have not begun communicating or contacting property owners or negotiating easements yet for any of those 4 projects. So they've all kind of come together, and we're processing the 4 of those together, which is why for this meeting we're talking about all 4 projects at once. There was a question or comment in a previous meeting about work that had been done before, and I do want to clarify that ODAV, trying to work with our airport users and some of the interested or supportive property owners nearby airports. We have tried to see if it's possible to get the obstructions down sooner, but those conversations have not been about easement acquisition or negotiating easements. So those are two different things that we've done here. And again, this, as Tom mentioned, this project is all about the easement acquisition. And this ask that we have for the board is what ODAV needs for us to proceed for all four of these projects. And I do want to, I'm going to state the ask. And as we go into executive session, you will hear more explanation and opportunity to discuss. But this is going to be our ask, and it is for the board to issue a resolution authorizing ODAV to exercise its authority of eminent domain to acquire aviation easements to protect the Aurora, Chiloquin, Joseph, and Malino state airports as presented. Any questions on any of this before we move on?
And thank you for that, Tony. I have, I see DOJ listed on this as well, and I didn't know if that was just to go into executive session or if Stacy had something to say in the open meeting before we go into executive session.
Oh, for the agenda, sorry, thank you, Chair Stevens. No, I'm only going to present in the executive session. But this is still, so we'll go into executive session and come back out, but now is still an appropriate time for any of the board members to ask questions, or you can do it about the material that was just presented to you, or that can be continued to after the executive session to continue your discussion.
Okay, and I know the executive session may be informative as well. And so unless there's a pressing question from board members, I would suggest that we go into executive session. Steve?
Thanks, Chair. No question. Just wanted to acknowledge this greater amount of information and thank both staff and the Century West team for the greater level of detail and background of this before we go into the executive session. This was very helpful.
Indeed, very helpful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to just scroll to look for other raised hands. Okay, then, so Alexis, what are we doing? Are we pausing this meeting and then going into executive session and coming back out?
Yes, we should. There should be the statement that you'll make, and you'll announce the time that we will come back into this regular session.
Okay. So this executive session is in approximately an hour. So just a flag for the board members. Remember, you need to go to the other Teams link to go into the executive session Teams meeting. And so we will say we will come back out into the regular. Go ahead.
So sorry, I'm sorry to interject. If you make that statement, there'll be a spot in there that you can state the time that will come back.
The time. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I do see Jeff's hand up.
Yeah, just to make sure I understand, we're logging out of this meeting to log into a new meeting. So we will be getting out of here and then coming back, correct?
Yep. You can't open two at once. So you got to log out, log into the executive session.
That's what I thought. Process. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right, very good. Then I will go ahead and read the statement. The State Aviation Board will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602F, which allows the board to meet in executive session to consult with counsel to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. Representatives of the news media and designated staffs shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session, at the end of the executive session, we will return to open session at approximately 11, at approximately 12:10, and rejoin the main Teams meeting. Okay. I will see y'all in the other Teams meeting then. Okay. Alexis, looks like it's 12:10.
Mhm.
Do we have all of the board members back?
I am just waiting on Bill. Doesn't look like he's in yet.
Yeah, he'll be back shortly.
And there he is.
Okay. And are you recording?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, we are back from executive session. Thank you, Stacy and staff. That was very informative. I think we have a much better understanding of the work that we're doing around easements for safety. So this next section is an action section. It's a board authorization to ODAV to proceed with acquisition of an navigation easement in accordance with ORS Chapter 35 at Joseph, Malino, Aurora, and Chiloquin State Airports. And I know before we left for executive session, Tony gave us an overview and along with the folks from Century West. Are there questions or comments from board members at this point on those presentations? I am not seeing any raised hands. Okay, Alexis, unless I'm missing any, I don't see any raised hands. So then I would entertain a motion. I have a draft motion that I can put out there for everyone, which is ODAV requests that the board issue a resolution authorizing ODAV to exercise its authority of eminent domain to acquire navigation easements to protect the Aurora, Chiloquin, Joseph, and Malino state airports. Bill.
I'll make that motion as stated by Chair Stevens for ODAV to authorizing them to do the eminent domain to acquire navigation easements as presented.
Okay, I have a motion from Bill. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second from Steve Nagy. And do we have any discussion? All right, so I will just acknowledge that the word eminent domain can be triggering for some folks. But I think we have good clarity now after the presentations today that these actions are not just an effort to take anyone's property. It is purely an action to protect the airspace at these airports. And so I think we all have had a better education about the process needed to be able to accomplish that, to make sure that the ODAV stays in good standing and able to move forward in a productive manner with any of the neighbors of these airports that would be impacted. Okay, I'm scrolling to see hands up, and otherwise I will call for the vote. And Alexis, the roll call.
Okay, thank you. Bill Gropp.
Aye.
Jim Knight.
Yes.
Sarah Lucas.
Aye.
Steve Nagy.
Aye.
Brian Pring is excused. Jeff Pritchard.
Aye.
And Catherine Stevens.
Aye. And that motion passes. Thank you, everybody, for that. And we are coming to the end of our agenda items. Our next meeting will be December 4th in Salem. And unless there's anything else for the good of the order, then I think we can adjourn. Thank you so much, everyone. Good to see you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.